Yeah,
We're going
we're
live.
late.
Boyos, we live now.
Before we actually start, let's
my screen as well. So
yeah. Before we actually start, let's like give it a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
sure.
So I'm gonna make a post.
Yeah, I'm looking for like where the video is so I can have it up. Here it is, live now.
As
Audio off,
confirmed.
please.
The only reason they want to call it the Big Falcon rocket is probably just to keep it PG.
Probably. Things are live.
If they say big fucking rocket on YouTube, their videos get demonetized. Someone has the stream echoing in their mic.
I turned it off. Hey, SNN, are your videos monetized?
No,
Okay, good.
you gotta be at like 10,000 views to apply for that
you
now.
have to.
That's not true. My videos are monetized.
Hey, really?
Yep.
Huh.
Hey, Carl's here.
I should have
hey,
bet
Carl.
money
Carl
that Carl
Sagan.
was going to be the first one here.
Wait, what'd you say?
I should have bet money that Carl was going to be the first one here.
I wouldn't have taken that bet. He always is. It has been suggested that this article be merged with ITS launch vehicle. That's not. It shouldn't be because ITS is different. Anyways,
Who has a stream echoing still?
not me.
I don't hear it, but I'm also wearing headphones, so it can't be me.
It isn't me either.
Yeah, I can't
wait.
hear it through the.
Yeah, I'm
Never
not
mind.
hearing.
That was me. I had the volume up on it because I probably have it pulled up because I'm an idiot.
No echo. Carl confirms. So that means our audio is good.
Good.
It's almost like we know what we're doing now.
That's a funny joke.
Kinda. Not
Except
entirely.
me.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
I feel like we can improve the audio quality greatly here.
Jesus!
Who's gonna be carrying gravel around?
I had to rip my headphones off for that, you asshole.
If there's a little bit of feedback, let me reduce this. No, let me reduce this. Now I can't hear you guys as well.
Yeah, guys, we're just getting set up here. We'll start the actual
We'll do
discussion.
actual talky things in a minute.
I just put the post on iPhoney.
I'll repub.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I'm a strong independent account that don't need to repub.
Yeah, I already made a post and then both of them repubbed it. Cool. I woke up an hour ago. I woke up much more than an hour ago.
I think I woke up 3 hours ago. Fight me.
Hello, welcome to the stream. Shall we
Yes.
start now?
I thought we already did. What the hell?
No, we only faked.
We're live. We haven't really started. What are you doing?
My internet broke.
We noticed. Fix it.
I'm working on it. One sec. Let me convert off of my phone Wi-Fi. Or onto my phone Wi-Fi. You know what's it's sad when my phone has a stream is going live.
Did you change your to a Wi-Fi connection not run by a potato?
Alright,
potato
welcome
from
back.
Portal
We're
is
no
hosting our
longer on
internet.
iPhoney servers. Stream is good.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, I see it back on now. I'll keep an eye on it.
copy.
Okay,
Alright.
welcome everybody.
Yeah, we'll do actual talky
Yes.
things.
Do we want to do introductions?
I'm Jacob. I do rockets. Hi.
I'm Thomas. I also do rockets.
I'm Paraspora. I also do rockets.
That's a
Kinda.
lie.
I'm SpaceX fan. I used to do rockets.
Yo. Okay, so here's what actually our credentials are. That's not English.
It's
It
not
might be,
English,
like,
it's
old-
freedom.
Anyway, my credentials are: I am an aerospace engineering major at Everett Community College in Everett, Washington. I am the I'm the PR officer of the rocketry club there, and I also make parts for numerous aerospace companies at my work.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that this was an interview.
He's hoping the
For a
SpaceX
second.
recruiter's listening.
Yeah, I know. I gotta make sure they know. Thomas, are you gonna do your actual?
I guess I'll go. Yeah. So Thomas Burkhardt on here as MAXAerospace, aerospace engineering major at Texas A&M University. Also on the CanSat team here. Yeah.
I'm SpaceX fan or SNN, but SpaceNRobots is still running the stream because I'm an idiot, don't know what I'm doing.
I mean, I'm not
But-
much better.
And we all know how that's going so far.
Yeah.
But I'm not in college or anything, but I just love space, so
Do you love robots?
maybe.
Can't have my name.
Only if they're in space.
At Astra.
Yeah. I am Paraspora ad Astra, as you can probably tell. I mean, well, yeah. And I'm just a student, but I love space, so.
Lit.
Carl Sagan had a dream where he and Elon went to Cedar Point, apparently.
Sounds like a great time. I wouldn't want to wake up.
Same.
Did he show you that he's commando, or did you ride in a Tesla? Or did he take you to lunch and then crash his McLaren F1? Why are the Raptors mock diamonds so sexy that I would fuck them? Yeah, want to vaporize your ding dong? Great idea.
Okay. So, BFR.
Holy shit.
I'm still in shock from that presentation.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Who isn't in
Oh,
shock,
shit,
though?
we're gonna
Let's
get
be
sued
honest.
by Good Mythical Morning now.
Wait, really?
Yeah, because I did their catchphrase.
I don't even know what it is.
It's, let's talk about that.
Welcome to the Alexa.
What the fuck?
The university company.
Tell your Alexa to. Can you turn Alexa off?
So your feedback continues on the
I muted Alexa. This is
Alright,
going great.
I've got some notes here. If you want me to do like a brief summary of pretty much what we learned, and then we can kind of go from there.
That'd be excellent.
Sure.
All right. So for those of you who may not have caught the actual announcement or just want a refresher, basically what was announced is a scaled down version of the interplanetary transport system, which is and it's now no longer called the interplanetary transport system. It's now just being known as BFR, which is short for Big Fucking Rocket or Big Falcon Rocket, depending on how PG you want to be. Basically, the concept with this vehicle is that it's going to make all of SpaceX's other products obsolete, and that this one vehicle is going to take the role of everything that SpaceX has ever made. So think it's going to replace the Falcon series of rockets. It's going to replace the Dragon spacecraft, because this rocket will be able to fill all those roles in a better way. So that's the general concept. We'll obviously get into details about what they changed and what other applications they talked about. They talked a lot about applications other than Mars transport, and most of those applications are key to getting the funding for the rocket. So that's important. We'll talk about that. We also got some updates just on kind of flight profiles to different destinations, including the moon and Mars. We got some better cost numbers a little bit, or at least some information about what the costs could look like. We also got an update on timeline. We'll talk about that. And then we did get a couple small updates about just how they're progressing towards the first launch, and that kind of ties in with the timeline as well. So I guess let's just start with the details in design. I don't know if does someone have the slides that if you want to just go through that or something.
I mean, I can pull them up again.
Basically, so we got. I'll just go through my notes here. Crew capacity is still approximately 100 people, give or take a few. The layout of the spaceship hasn't actually changed that much.
That's not true.
Well, we've gotten more details because we didn't get a lot of detail the first time, so they kind of detailed it a little more.
Yeah, like that giant window is now 2 windows.
Well, yeah, so they changed
Right.
the windows. They obviously the Delta Wing is kind of a new thing.
I'm pulling it up on the stream now.
Okay, so the crew capacity is still about 100. Basically, he said 40 cabins, and each cabin can hold up to 5 uncomfortably and 2 to 3 comfortably. So that gets you to around 100, and obviously that would probably just change flight to flight. Yeah, so you can see on screen that's the layout of the spaceship. You have your pressurized and unpressurized cargo near the top, and your propellant tanks, and then your engines. The Delta Wing is also new.
And cool.
The old design kind of had 2 or I guess had 3 small wings, but they weren't wings so much as
They were
they were
flaps.
Yeah. So
The old design's wings had issues as well, and it had more than one issue with its re-entry profile. And that's basically what this fixes.
So talking about the Delta Wing is there for atmospheric control. Basically, the wing allows it to land in any level of atmosphere. So you have no atmosphere, which when you go to the moon, there's practically no atmosphere. Go to thin atmospheres like Mars, and thick atmospheres like Earth or possibly, I don't know, Venus. He didn't talk about Venus, but that theoretically could work. So that's kind of the reason for the wing. They said they tried to avoid doing that, and it was unclear what downside the Delta Wing would be. Do you guys have any opinions on that?
It's expensive, and it takes longer to get commissioned, right? Like, you have to get it cleared to fly with NASA, and that's going to take a lot of qualifications. It's a whole other subsystem, and it makes a bunch of stuff different, you know?
And there's so many things that could possibly go wrong with it, which would be pretty expensive to fix. So,
Well, I mean, it's a hydraulic system. It's not going to fail. But,
Famous last words.
oh, shut the fuck up. Pneumatics are what break. It's hydraulic.
So we've kind of been ignoring chat for a second. We got a couple questions in chat that I want to go off to.
Yeah. Fuel is still methane and oxygen.
Yep, fuel does not change.
It is
Carl
extra
asked.
mass. That's not a whole lot of extra mass. It's a pretty light subsystem.
Carl Sagan asked if they're going to make ITS eventually. That is kind of unclear at this point.
That is
Now,
true.
I will say one thing. Elon has consistently said that the rocket, the BFR that they are planning on building now, in the future is going to be looked on as a very small rocket. He has a vision that in the future rockets will just simply be enormous, and that'll kind of be the norm. So will you see ITS class rockets in the future? Probably, at least according to Elon, he thinks so. But it looks like for now, as sort of SpaceX's own plans, BFR has effectively replaced ITS. So that's that. Let's see.
What was next on the list?
I'm just looking through to see what other questions people are asking. Elon did say that BFR can still do in-situ refueling. The spaceship will do in-situ refueling for Mars missions. He also specifically said that that is not necessary for moon missions. I believe if you do one refuel in low Earth orbit for a moon mission, then you have enough fuel to land on the surface and then come back without refueling on the moon. Fuel is still methane and oxygen.
And regarding the fueling too, it's different from last year where the ships were like kind of docked sideways. Now they're gonna like the back ends of the ship are gonna like dock together to transfer the fuel.
I can pull up a picture of that.
Yeah, so the refueling process, I don't know, because the only refuel, like they said last time that they were going to refuel on orbit, and then the concept just had them kind of parking together, but it never even showed like a docking port or anything. So it appears that they didn't really have a docking mechanism at that point, and now they do. Basically, the two spacecraft will line up tail to tail, and if you look at a picture of the engine configuration, you can see on the sides there are fuel lines that will connect up, and that is how refueling is done.
On screen now.
There we go. And just for a sense of scale, you know, that tiny little dot is a person.
Yeah.
Just to give a sense of scale.
Yeah, so on the left there would be the tanker, and on the right is your crewed or cargo spacecraft.
And they said they're just going to use the thrusters to get the fuel to the other ship.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I know it's like 0G, but why wouldn't a pump work though? That's what I don't understand. Like, doesn't the pump kind of just pull fuel normally? Why would that not work in 0G?
The problem is with cryogenic fuel, it's hard to transfer using pumps, and acceleration would be more efficient. Is, I believe, why they did that.
There's a couple reasons. One is, when you're in microgravity, your fuel's going to atomize around your tank, and you need it to stay cinetic. And the other reason is pumps are heavy, and the other reason is, as he said, you know, if you're pumping, that's a system that is delicate and has to work at that crazy cold temperature. Cryogenics don't like to be pumped. They have to build special, really heavy, big pumps for doing that. It's way easier to just have a valve and use micro thrusters.
Yeah, so that is that. Also,
Clayton,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Clayton just asked, SNR, yeah, do you still have a hangover?
Nah, I'm fine.
Hal asked, if Dragon is no longer doing propelled landings, are they going to do a flyby with it? I'm not sure what that means. Basically, the plan with Dragon is they are keeping the thrusters on for the crew version as an abort system, but other than they will not be used for landing, it'll be a parachute landing. If you're talking about the lunar flyby mission, that is still going to happen. Are you talking about a Mars mission with Dragon?
That's not
because I do not believe there's any plans for that.
Yeah, Red Dragon's canceled, and there's no further plans with it.
Moving on. Another thing with vehicle design, they did mention specifically that there is a solar storm shelter on the spacecraft, which is important. A big concern with all deep space concepts is you got to handle radiation.
Yep.
Basically, you can handle normal radiation through some basic shielding, but during solar storms, it reaches points where you kind of have to have a different protocol in place. So it looks like they are incorporating that into the design. They'll have a shelter where if you have a solar storm that happens, which we are constantly observing those things happen, the crew will be able to go into the shelter for, it only takes a couple minutes for the peak of it to pass.
But you still want to stay in for a few hours.
Is it a few hours?
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically if that happens, they can move to a certain part of the ship that is more heavily shielded.
Yeah.
Also, they can just turn the ship so the engines kind of take most of it, so it's kind of got to travel through the whole ship, right?
Right, yeah, it's also
technically reach it.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to deal with it. It's not really a huge issue.
Yep.
So that's that. Engine configuration, again, 6 engines, 4 vacuum engines, and 2 sea-level engines.
Hang on, there was a question in the chat. Timothy said, I wonder if shielding will be sufficient because it could last up to 12 hours. It's not an ablative shield or anything. If you have shielding that can block a certain percentage of it, you're fine. It will always block that percentage.
It's not like a heat shield where it wears away as it shields stuff. It doesn't really do that. So it's not like how long it lasts is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, and also it's likely that much of the shielding will be electromagnetic. They'll actually project a field around it, and that's all done by the solar panels, so it's fine. Oh yeah, he just said it requires mask. Yeah, but like if you look at it, so it does require mask, but they'll likely use water, which they'll have on board for the crew anyway. You only need like 2 inches of water to block that much radiation, and they'll just use that tank for the crew's water around the cabin.
And also, the reason for having a specific
So
shelter...
it's like a double storage.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reason for having a specific shelter, too, because think about it, what you could do is just make the whole ship shielded and not have a shelter, but rather just have the whole spacecraft shielded. But by building a very basic shielding spacecraft and then have a more substantially shielded part of it, you're saving mass that way. So that's kind of why they do it.
Right, and it's likely that the shield... I broke again.
Yeah,
we noticed.
Get sit together.
It's not my fault. I don't control the fucking Wi-Fi.
Get that SpaceX internet.
We have 32
we need
megabits
Starlink.
down. It's just the fact that there's like 12 other people at my house right now.
Alright, so anyway, as I was saying, I don't even know what I was saying. Oh yeah, I was talking about engine configuration. So, 4 Raptor vacuums and 2 Raptor sea-level engines. The idea with having the 2 sea-level engines is for redundancy. They talked about how when Falcon 9 does its propulsive landing, it only has 1 engine running, which offers little to no redundancy if that engine were to fail. Actually, it offers no redundancy, in fact. However, by having 2 sea-level engines, if one were to fail, the spacecraft is still capable of landing using only the 1. So that is the idea behind that.
And also interesting with it, last year they said the vacuum engines didn't gimbal, they would just kind of steer it using thrust, but now all 6 engines are going to gimbal, sea level and vacuum.
I believe the sea level engines have higher gimbal rates and like ranges, but they are all capable of gimbaling. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. There's a diagram.
So that's that. Basically, they want, because safety is going to be a number 1 issue, because you got to convince people that this is a safe system. So I think Elon said that he wants to get the safety to like the risk about the same as getting on an airliner, which is one of the safest modes of transport we have. So,
Timothy just asked the question: will they fire the vacuum engines on Martian takeoff?
I do not know. I would think not.
Yeah. It is 1% of Earth atmospheric pressure, right? But you're still running the risk of it's a much larger expansion than that. It's actually designed for a perfect vacuum, and so you'd rather use a atmospheric engine for almost an entire atmosphere, like up to like 99.999% of it.
Yeah, so I think takeoff will still be only the sea level engines, because I mean you have less gravity and you have a less thick atmosphere, so it's not a particularly demanding ascent profile either.
Yeah.
So that is that. Moving along, the booster engine configuration. We know it has 31 engines now. It had the original concept had 42. However, we know little to nothing about how those engines are configured.
Yeah. And I don't know if they had a picture for that.
There
was like a side view, but
yeah, that's
all we got.
Yeah, that seems to be
one of the pictures.
True. The
Can you
booster,
pull that?
There was not a lot of information about the booster.
I don't think it's changed a whole lot from the first time. Although, you know what? Now that I think about it, hold on, keep talking. I gotta pull something.
Okay.
There's 4 like fins instead of 3. Same with the grid fins, and also he didn't really talk about it much, just because pretty sure he said this last year too. But it's basically just a scaled up Falcon 9 booster in theory, so it in theory should be easier to make than the spaceship.
They know how the engines are configured for sure.
Yeah. Do you have the picture of the booster?
I'm looking.
And spaceship? Yeah.
I'm looking at it now. I think I didn't even notice where the Griffins were until just now. Because I was looking at the picture and I realized, wait, do they got rid of the grid fins? And I didn't notice, but no, they're on like the inner stage, so it's hard to see. But yeah, they have 4 grid fins and 4 like just aerodynamic fins near the bottom, instead of 3 like it was last time.
And I think I saw this on
I've got it.
Reddit, but
I've got the CAD model.
okay.
I'm putting it up now. 1 sec.
So
But, I can't remember whether you guys said this or if I saw it on Reddit, but someone said that they're wondering if all the engines on the booster are going to gimbal, or just maybe the inner ones will gimbal.
yeah, so we know the original plans. Well, I'm not sure if they talked about that in the original one.
It looks like there's an inner segment of 4 engines, and they have more space between them than the rest of them, and I'd reckon that they gimbal.
How did you
That
get
would make
that?
sense. Where did you get that CAD file?
That is from our SpaceX Mars architecture.
Was that from a fan or from SpaceX?
I believe...
Because my guess is someone guessed and put that in.
I mean, it makes sense, so it's probably close either way, but
Yeah, so that might be what it looks like. And yeah, I think a central cluster of a couple that gimbal and the rest are kind of fixed is probably what they'll do. I believe that was the plan for the original ITS-2, so they'd probably just keep that. About the anywhere in the world in under an hour, we'll get to that pretty soon. We'll talk about applications in a little bit.
Intercontinental ballistic airlines.
I just wish Elon would do his AMA that he mentioned.
Yeah, there's gonna be an AMA hopefully sometime soon. So hopefully
Wait, is it
we'll
on
get some.
Twitter?
I think it's gonna be on Reddit.
Oh.
I hope so.
It'll probably be on r/SpaceX again.
That's because I know he did one a few years ago, and that's what that was.
He did one after the first presentation to make up for the awful Q&A.
Oh, did he really? Okay. So that's that. Something that stayed the same about the booster. It still has no legs. They're still planning on landing on the launch mount. And we know they've made a lot of progress with precise landings with Falcon 9. So they're going to be using that expertise to work on BFR landings. So here's a question I have for you guys. When they fly BFR for the first time, where are they going to land it?
That's a great question. I don't know. That, I think, is going to be a question we can't answer until we see how confident they are at the time.
I still think that they're eventually going to try landing in launch mounts like on the landing zones instead of the launch pads.
They'll almost build like a mock launch clamp in the middle of landing zone 1.
Right.
And try to land there instead of trying to actually land on the pad.
Yeah, that seems like a good first step.
Yeah, or I said modify like a shuttle crawler so it can just be transported right after landing. You don't need a separate crane or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they'd want to kind of keep it somewhat simple, just because you don't want to put all that work into an infrastructure that you're really only using for test flights. Because a big crucial part of the infrastructure is that you land on the launch mount on the pad. So I could see building a mock set of launch clamps, because that's relatively little hardware, especially if it's simply a mocked up and not. It could be like I don't know if you want to say a boilerplate launch clamp.
Timothy, that's correct. They do have 0.7 meter precision and only need 2 meters for launch mounting, or launch mount landing. But the BFR is a different architecture. They won't know how accurately they can land it until they've done it once. So they'll probably attempt it somewhere where they're not going to kill all of their ground equipment.
Yeah. But yeah, they've gotten the precision that, like, if they were going to try and land Falcon 9 in the launch mount, theoretically they probably could.
Yeah, they'd probably try that immediately if they had the same tolerances on it. But remember, you're scaling up. Your tolerances on a BFR are going to be bigger than they would be on a Falcon 9. So if your 0.7 meters on a Falcon 9 will translate to like 3 meters on a BFR.
Also, saying it will have more maneuverability than Falcon 9 is probably not true. You have a much bigger and heavier spacecraft
Right.
that, generally speaking, is going to respond to control surfaces slower than a smaller vehicle would.
Yeah.
But there is also the fact that BFR can hover and Falcon 9 can't.
Yes, so that is so I guess in that regard you'll have more precision. I don't know if I'd call that more maneuverability, but yes, they do say that it's going to be a hover landing. Similar to if you see a Blue Origin New Shepard landing, the booster hovers and then kind of lands softly. Whereas Falcon 9 currently does what's called a hover slam, where it basically
It comes to a
the
complete
lowest
stop.
throttle setting is still a positive force upward.
Right.
So they have to shut down the engine right above the pad and basically drop onto
Right.
it.
So basically, Falcon 9 will come in and then stop moving about 2 inches above the ground and then drop.
So let's see what else. So payload, we have 150 tons to orbit as max payload, and you can get all that tonnage also to Mars if you do enough refuels. Expendable, he said you could get 250 tons to low Earth orbit. And that's an interesting question. If you look at, for comparison, Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket has been designed with a lot of integrated hardware with landing legs and whatnot, so that the belief is that rocket will never fly expendable. And I'm wondering if there's an element of that with BFR.
Yeah.
You don't really have integrated hardware because you have no landing legs. The only real recovery hardware, I guess, is the grid fins. So I guess theoretically you could fly an expendable version without the grid fins, but you probably wouldn't. The difference with BFR is you'd lose the mass of the grid fins. Is there any other hardware they'd be able to get rid of?
You don't need any systems for you don't need your avionics. You probably would need less thrusters.
You would still need avionics.
No, you'd need different avionics, probably less extreme. And you don't need your thrusters, right? You don't need like RCS, like big, huge, heavy RCS like the Falcon 9 has.
Okay, so you might have you lose some mass there, but I think it's a lot less mass than taking off a set of landing legs. So the biggest difference between reusable and expendable is simply going to be you're using up more fuel and not using your landing fuel. So that's really the main difference. But yeah, I guess so. Yes, you lose your mass in your grid fins and RCS systems.
We're talking about the booster, not the ship.
Yeah, I'm talking about the booster at this point.
That is a good point, though. If you were, for some reason, flying the spaceship expendable, you could probably get rid of the Delta Wing.
I doubt
Yeah,
they'll ever fly the spaceship expendable.
Yeah, that would. I guess if you were going to launch a satellite or something, you'd release the satellite and just let the stage stay up there as debris.
Or if it was the last flight of it or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they'd ever do that.
Why would you discard something in space when you could take it down and refurb it if it's the last flight? Or not refurb, but like take it apart and recycle.
So that is that. Do we have any other things to talk about with the design? Any big design changes?
Oh yeah, it's better than Blue Origin.
That's always going to be true.
Yeah, I'm just
Better than
addressing a
Lockheed
comment on the
Martin's.
stream.
Yeah, I have some comments about this relating to other companies that we'll get to in a little bit. But do we have any other? I think I covered all the big design changes.
Yeah, I think the cargo bay is interesting.
Yep. They have
it's like we predicted that though.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to go. If you instead of developing an upper stage with a fairing, having basically a variant of the spacecraft that has a cargo door, is the right way to go about that because you're still have a fully reusable system then.
I believe there's a picture of it in the stream that'll come up here in a second, but
Yeah,
There is, I just saw it.
But note about that, they'd said that due to the size of the spaceship, they'd be able to launch a telescope with a mirror 10 times the size of the Hubble mirror. without having any folding mechanisms or anything. So that gives you a sense of scale as to how big of a spacecraft they can fit in there.
Elon also commented that you could fit like an entire Falcon 1 inside of the cargo bay.
Yeah, he said a stack of Falcon 1s.
Yeah, a stack of Falcon 1s.
I think he said a complete Falcon 1 stack, which includes the second stage.
Oh, is that what he meant?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I think it would be hilarious if their first flight they like launched a Falcon 1 fully fueled. They're like, go. You're worried it'll suffer some of the same problems as the space shuttle, considering how large and complex of a spacecraft it is. So it's actually ridiculously simple compared to the space shuttle still. It has a lot of different subsystems, but each subsystem is relatively simple.
I think the biggest misconception about the space shuttle is that the cost was related to so the cost was related to how complicated it was. However, a lot of those costs mostly came down to politics, and that it was a very heavily involved spacecraft with NASA engineers and whatnot, and therefore the development cost and the operating cost just went through the roof. And then the other part of it is that the space shuttle is only partially reusable, whereas BFR is fully reusable. So that is, I think, two big points that say that BFR is going to be well below the problems that the space shuttle had.
Right, and the other main one is the spacecraft isn't on the side of the thing.
Yes, which makes everything a lot more simple.
Yeah.
Great. Also, unrelated, can you guys hear my dog barking in the background or no?
Yeah, but it's fine.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't even notice it, so...
Okay. Go ahead and keep talking. I'm going to be right back.
Okay.
Okay. SNN's going to go take care of his dog.
Quick question. What are your guys' opinions on Elon's Hyperloop? I kind of think it's a pipe dream. Pun not intended.
Literally?
I think it's
I think it's going to be
economically
really cool if
infeasible.
they actually finish it.
I don't think it's technologically infeasible. I think that it's economically infeasible.
I can agree with that. I think the technological feasibility is a lot less
Than people make it out to be.
Yeah, a lot of people say that the problem is with, you can't sustain that kind of vacuum for large spaces or something like that, and which we do already in multiple scenarios. So that's not really the issue, I think. But I could see an economic problem being that just getting the demand for it, and especially if they're going to do it underground. He talks about how the tunneling thing just is such a long process. There's some economic problems to it.
Mm-hmm.
However, if it does get working and if it becomes a thing that's present in most major cities, it could connect with the BFR anywhere in the world in under an hour concept, where you get your self-driving Tesla, you drive to the nearest Hyperloop station, which takes you to the BFR launch platform, which takes you anywhere you want.
Right. You get to someone's house from your house in 2 hours. Anywhere in the world.
How much do you want to bet that's Elon's dream world?
Yeah, just Teslas, Hyperloops, and BFRs. The only way
Elon's dream world is Mars to Earth in 2 hours.
That would be interesting.
That'd be.
Let's just build a Hyperloop between here and Mars.
Here's a question for you guys regarding the Earth to Earth thing. Obviously, the passengers are going to be experiencing G's and everything else, and you're probably going to need to be somewhat healthy to handle that. So, do you guys think there's going to be some certification process to be able to be allowed to fly on these things, or do you think it's going to be like an airplane where you're sitting there and they just tell you what to do?
So I have a comment on that. So BFR is designed to go to Mars. And when you go to Mars, you need to be using all the efficiency of your rocket because it's designed to those parameters. When you're doing a suborbital hop, you're demanding a lot less of your vehicle, which means that you can use some extra fuel margins to not necessarily be as efficient,
Right.
but instead just sustain some pretty normal Gs,
Right. The
which
space
means
shuttle
that theoretically,
had an aggressive launch profile at 3 Gs at peak acceleration.
which isn't really that bad.
Right.
Uh,
Most people, if they don't have a heart condition, can survive that.
And well, so survival and comfort is two different things,
Right.
of course.
Now, if you can survive already, and you have an extra fuel margin, you can reduce that to like 2 Gs, and anyone can survive that comfortably.
Yeah, 2 Gs is not even uncomfortable at that point.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you can use those extra fuel margins to throttle down, early on, not necessarily be at full thrust for as long as you would be for a space launch, and basically you'll have G levels most similar to an airline flight, and that won't really be an issue. So.
Yeah, you know that feeling when you first take off in an airline and your seat kind of goes whoop? That's about 2 Gs peak, and you're just sustaining that for a little while.
Yeah. So I guess so. Let's talk more about the Earth to Earth thing. So this is basically the concept that you put these launch pads out in the water near major cities, and you have to remember that most major cities are built on water. It's kind of a thing.
Well, because humans used water for transport.
Right. So you'll have, and they still will, according to Elon.
Yeah.
They'll have this pad that's out in the water to be far enough away from buildings and whatnot. It'll have a landing pad for the spaceship, and it'll have a launch mount for the booster. And you notice the crane that's kind of in the middle is the same crane that's in the original concept video, which basically lifts the spaceship and mounts it to the booster.
I don't think they've designed a crane.
Well, okay, so they might not have designed it specifically, but it looks exactly the same as the original concept
Right,
video.
I think
and
that's
I'm
just their concept crane.
Right, I'm not saying it's going to look like that. I'm just saying that there will be a crane on this thing.
In the current architecture, yes.
So that is how that is going to work, and basically you'll have a suborbital flight. The booster will put the spacecraft up to a certain altitude. Booster will come back and land on the launch mount. And the spacecraft will go and land at another, I guess, spaceport, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. That's the plan.
And also the price for it.
Yeah, so he didn't mention it in the presentation, but then a couple minutes later, he posted on Instagram like a video clip of it, and he said in the comments that he forgot to mention that the price to ride on this, I don't know what you would call it, but this BFR Earth-to-Earth transportation thing would be competitive with an economy class airline ticket.
Holy shit.
So that is
competitive for the same distance. So that's like a flight to Australia from LA is like $2,000.
Right, yeah, so it'll be the same as an airline ticket to the same destination. So
a lot quicker.
And it'll be a lot quicker. Now you have to remember, so the big tagline for this thing is anywhere on Earth in under an hour. That is in flight time. You have to remember that just like when you go to an airport, there's going to be security. You're going to have to put on a spacesuit probably because you're going to be in the vacuum, and if something happens, you're going to be wearing a flight suit. What's that?
I doubt very much they'll make you do that.
Yeah, aren't
You don't
those
think they're going
suits
to be
like
wearing a flight suit?
probably not? Aren't those suits kind of like made like specifically for a person, or like aren't the shuttle ones like that or something?
Boeing's new ones.
It wouldn't be too hard to make generally sized spacesuits. I don't think you have small, medium, large spacesuit. I don't know.
The Orlon is not specific. The only specific part of spacesuits is the gloves, and that's only so astronauts can touch things.
Oh god, I hear the dog now.
I don't think they'd make you wear a spacesuit because I don't think people would want to do that.
So that means they have to demonstrate that there are no pressurization problems.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good thing to pursue. I'm not sure that they'd get to that point, at least not at first.
It may take a couple years, but like by the time airlines started flying, people didn't wear flight suits.
Yeah, because they weren't going into space.
Okay, but like when they first flew planes, they flew flight suits. Oh god damn it, not again.
Did the thing did the thing drop again?
Yeah, I think.
It looks good on my end.
Is it okay still?
Yeah,
It like buffered for a little bit, but it's fine now.
Okay. Blue Origin won't use flight suits for suborbital flights. Yeah, so same thing, really.
Okay. Alright, so maybe I'm wrong about that. I mean, they didn't really mention that in the presentation, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, so my point was that it says anywhere on Earth in under an hour. That's in flight time. You have to include, there will probably be, security, just time to board and deboard. So I think you said like 2 hours total time might be more reasonable.
Right, but that's like still highly competitive.
Yes, that is, you could go there and back 4 times in the time it takes for an airliner to get there. So.
Yeah, and I'd do it. Let's be very clear.
So
Like I would go to Singapore for lunch.
And you have to remember that, especially early on, eventually you have to develop demand for people who actually need to use this as a regular piece of transport. But at least at first, you'll have people who just want to do it just to do it.
Right.
You want to have people that it'll almost be a tourist thing.
Like planes were.
Right.
People will be like, I want to fly on this rocket once in my life, and that's enough.
Right.
But then eventually it'll become a thing.
And that also helps if you make if the price starts out more than a regular airline ticket, the appeal to that extra price, not only, it being faster, but you would also have the appeal of this is a cool new luxury thing.
Yeah.
Waffle said, what about counterterrorism or hijacking prevention that is going to be an issue in these times? I would argue
there's
not
that
going to
it's
be a
not
pilot,
because you
so
can't hijack an autonomous spacecraft.
Yeah.
I mean, technically you could hijack the software, but I mean I
That's
doubt
You would
that's gonna
just
be a
have
problem.
secure. You would. The terrorism thing, you would have secure. You would have the same security you do for airliners, where you scan for explosives and whatnot. But the hijacking, I don't think is an issue because this thing doesn't have pilots.
Right.
It's computerized. So unless you're going to hack the flight computer.
I'm gonna hack the flight computer.
But what would the point be?
And also, what are you going to do if you hijack it? It's on a suborbital trajectory, so it's coming down no matter what.
ICBM, dude.
Yep.
You just gotta tweak your descent so you hit a city instead of the landing site outside the city.
Yeah. But again,
Also-
that requires hacking it. It's not as simple as storming a cockpit.
Hacker man.
Yeah. So I
what
think that's
other-
a non-issue.
Yeah. What about the other applications for the Earth-to-Earth, do you think? Because I remember I suggest like military, or I think you
military-
suggested like rescue
Military will
too.
definitely want it.
Well, so there's a lot of problems with using this for military applications.
One is you're flying a giant bomb.
That's not even one thing. So here's the thing. So now we're gonna get deep, guys. All right, you ready for this? You have an arms race which, generally speaking, has settled down because everyone has nukes, no one has a missile shield, and therefore the arms race is, relatively speaking, settled down, except for countries that don't have nukes yet. If you were to introduce the capability for you being able to deploy half your army within a day on the other half of the planet, now there's a new motivation to develop a missile shield because you can shoot down the troops as they come in.
Yeah.
So this if the military were to get their hands on this and take this to a new level as far as the passengers being troops and hardware that goes with them and whatnot, the implications for that as far as world politics are huge and not necessarily good.
Yeah. I think the U.S. military will likely develop it and then decide it's dumb for a number of reasons and not continue it.
I think that is a fair prediction. I think that the U.S. government is very excited to study this and look at it as a possibility, but I would not be surprised if it's not really pursued.
There's a stereotype about the U.S. military, which is very true. They like guns.
Yeah.
They're going to want to play with their new gun for a while, and then they're going to decide it's not that as cool as they hoped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a big issue that you're gonna have to keep an eye on, seeing where that comes up and if anything develops there.
It comes down to, is Elon, morally okay with being a military-industrial contractor?
Right. So a big thing is that a lot of funding for spacecraft for any space industry is military funding, because you get to launch, not just DoD in general, because you get to launch satellites for the NRO. You get to launch, the SpaceX launched the X-37 space plane, which is an Air Force thing. So the appeal to at least developing a vehicle capable of serving the Department of Defense is huge, because you get a lot of money from that. And that funding can go directly towards more civilian goals and missions.
Yeah.
But there are other combat military implications for this. Obviously,
Cargo
you can
supply.
launch very heavy spy satellites and whatnot using the commercial cargo
And
version.
not just that, but you can use, your supply train can now be instant.
So
Right,
so there are other
They're like, we're
applications.
running out of ammo here, and then they're like, ammo's on the way.
Yeah, so there's that. That is true.
You can prime now your bombs.
So
It's also like, it won't just be military. I mean, you could use this for like disaster relief too. Load it with a bunch of supplies and then
absolutely.
Coast Guard fucking BFRs.
Yeah, so let's say a monsoon hits, Indonesia. The Red Cross can be there in a day.
No, the Red Cross can be there in 2 hours.
Okay, yeah, but I was assuming there would be multiple flights. But yeah, so there are many. So let's talk about other applications then. Do we have any other applications for the Earth-to-Earth part of this?
It's mostly going to be for moving people. Cargo does not typically need to be moved that fast unless it's something critical like organs.
Yeah, I think we talked about, organ transplant things if you wanted to do that. You could
Would
also...
hurricane relief be an option for it, do you think?
Yeah.
yeah,
Disaster relief.
Yeah.
I think theoretically, if you were able to transport like fresh food, like that's something that you can't transport long distances right now just because it takes so long. Theoretically, if you have a transport system that's this fast, if you could find the economic feasibility for it, so it's just perishable items, I guess is what I should say.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of those realms, cargo is probably not a huge Earth-to-Earth point.
Right, because it comes down to, are you really willing to pay, $3,000 to have your gummy bears here in 2 hours instead of 6?
Yeah.
Gummy bears are important though.
Yeah, I've got a bag of them right here.
That's why he said that.
It will help prove all flat earthers wrong. Trust
Right.
me,
Let's hope.
it won't.
No, it won't.
Can we go on a sidetrack for like a second?
Cyclist.
Can we talk about how B.O.B. the rapper is trying to get a GoFundMe to launch satellites to prove the Earth is flat?
Yeah.
Wait,
And he actually has some money for it.
what?
Yeah, look it up.
How?
I'll pull it up. I want to see like where it's gone.
What does he think a satellite is?
Who knows?
Here we go. Show B.O.B. the curve. It's raised $5,928.
What?
It's the goal is $1 million. He's only raised about 6,000. So
How much you want to bet he's just gonna keep the money and not prove anything?
probably. And I'll have some excuse. Oh, NASA wouldn't let me do it, or something. I don't know.
We will kidnap all flatards and take them on this flight. They'll just say it's a simulation or CGI or a hologram.
Yeah.
We'll just put them on the moon and tell them to shut the fuck up. Anyway, that's getting off topic. I wanted to talk
Right. So
about...
back to BFR.
Let's talk about timelines.
Well, hold on. Can we stay with applications for a little bit? Because there are other applications that we didn't talk about.
Sure.
So you saw multiple times in the slideshow, if you've been paying attention, that there is a render of the BFR docked to the space station. And
Yeah.
this is something I want to talk about. Obviously, this is not limited to the ISS. If there are future space stations, if, Bigelow Aerospace has their stations that they want to launch to different places and whatnot, so BFR can dock to, any of those. I think a big question mark with this is there really a demand to bring 150 tons of cargo at one time?
Only
'Cause
for...
That's
a
more than
industry-
half the mass of the space station itself.
It's an industry that doesn't exist yet because the capability doesn't exist. You're talking about developing a technology that makes other technologies possible.
Right, but there's always a problem if you develop the capability before you develop the market,
Yeah.
which is a problem in multiple ways for the system. But
Right. So I think at first, most of your satellite market is going to be military.
I would say so.
And then you're going to get large communications companies doing huge satellite buses that can launch, or that can cover all of North America's TV in one place. Right.
And you'll also have a big manifest filler for this rocket will be SpaceX's own satellites. SpaceX, if those who are watching aren't fully aware, SpaceX has currently been developing a large fleet of satellites for satellite internet. These satellites are relatively small; they're not huge satellites, but you need to launch a lot of them.
Yeah,
So being able to launch, several tens or maybe even hundreds of satellites in a single launch, that would be a big capability that this rocket offers. So I think, and that carries over to other companies trying to launch constellations of satellites. So yeah, that'll be, I think, the biggest part of the market. So other applications. So yeah, space station. We talked about point-to-point. We talked about cargo variants. Also, another thing that he mentioned that you can use the cargo variant to clean up space debris, which
There's
I think.
a Swiss company that does that.
Well, okay, so this would be a whole new level of how you can clean up in a single mission.
Right, but I'm saying there's a Swiss company that would probably pay to have them do that.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about other solar system destinations. So Elon, for the first time ever, finally admitted that yes, this thing can land on the moon and can support moon bases.
Do we want to do that?
Well, so I think that SpaceX will probably not pursue a lunar base themselves, but rather when other groups inevitably do, Blue Origin wants to build a moon base, NASA wants to have a somewhat sustained presence on the moon. So this rocket will support those efforts. Whereas, in contrast to Mars, SpaceX is going to be building their Mars colony. So that's the difference there. So yeah, and then the other thing about lunar missions is that you don't need to refuel on the surface of the moon. The rocket has the capability by itself to land and then come back to Earth without refueling. And then, of course, Mars missions, which is the whole point of the system in the first place, that will require fuel production on Mars, but obviously it is still capable of getting to Mars.
Zubrin figured that one out for him.
Yeah. And for the Mars missions, it's 5 refuel flights to get maximum payload to Mars. Obviously, if you're for a certain mission, wherever you're flying less than 150 tons, theoretically you could have less refuel, low Earth orbit refuel missions. But yeah, so that is the capability for Mars missions, which is largely unchanged from ITS, other than payload bank.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to talk about timeline now?
Yeah, we can talk about timeline. It's Elon time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the whole problem with every time Elon mentions something, it's gonna be at least 1.5 times how long he said it will be.
So, if you did not catch the presentation, it's a general timeline. He said that construction of the first booster and spaceship will begin in 6 to 9 months. He said a lot of the tooling has already been ordered and other hardware has been ordered.
For the fuel tanks, the tooling has been ordered.
Yeah.
To
And then
make it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know
And
the
then-
guy who did that. That's a company called Electro Impact over here in Seattle. They made the carbon fiber robot for them.
So construction in 6 to 9 months, and then Elon said that it seems reasonable that within 5 years the spacecraft will fly for the first time. So that puts us in 2021 or 2022.
Yeah.
As far as more detailed timelines, he laid out a specific timeline for Mars, which is in 2022, there's a Mars transfer window in 2022, that he wants to send 2 unmanned cargo spacecraft that will confirm that there are resources available at the landing site, whatever landing site they choose, and also identify any additional hazards that need to be accounted for. And those ships will also place some infrastructure for future crewed missions, such as equipment for fuel production, habitats, bring solar panels and power generation and that kind of thing.
Yep. And then 2024 would be 4 ships with 2 cargo and 2 crew.
Yes.
Is that right? Yep.
Yes, and then he also specifically mentioned that all of the propellant production materials will come on that second window of cargo spacecraft.
Yeah.
So that will set up the main infrastructure that allows the spacecraft to start coming back, and pretty much sets up the first level of expansion.
We got a question too.
Yeah.
From
Are they going to
Timothy.
do autogeneous pressurization of the LOX tank? I would reckon that yeah, they will, but the tank will be coated with something to prevent oxidization of the carbon fiber. I would almost guarantee they've already thought of that and completely covered it. It's not hard. Materials science is really cool. That's a pretty easy thing to solve. You just got to put like Teflon on the inside.
So that is timeline. One thing he did not mention at all, because he kind of showed the animation and then dropped the mic, was the first point-to-point on Earth flights. He did not mention any sort of timeline for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is unfortunate, because I would have liked to have known what he was thinking about that. Because that is another thing, I talked about the moon. BFR will simply support other efforts for lunar bases and whatnot. For Mars, BFR is designed to construct SpaceX's Mars colony. For Earth to Earth, this will be a service that SpaceX is developing themselves. This isn't a vehicle that they expect other companies to buy and then use. SpaceX will be doing it themselves. At least that's what the animation shows. So. Another thing is that he mentioned, and this has been important for SpaceX overall, is flight rate. He talked about how, flight rate has been steadily increasing for SpaceX. They're aiming to have 20 launches total this year, and they've already had 13, I believe.
Yep, 13.
So looking for 7 more launches by the end of the year, which isn't totally unreasonable. They have 2 coming up or 3 coming up this month, I believe. And then next year they want to launch 30 Falcon flights, between Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. So that rate needs to keep increasing exponentially.
Yeah.
At one point, you're going to have multiple launches a day by SpaceX,
And we're gonna think that's normal.
and that is also crucial to the Earth-to-Earth thing. You don't have one airplane taking off every day.
Right.
Elon said, today, if you follow SpaceX and there's going to be a launch, you can mark it on your calendar. At some point, you're not going to be able to mark every launch on your calendar. It's just every day there are multiple launches, and it's normal.
People will stop watching live streams. They'll just be like, I kind of feel like doing this right now, and it'll be like plane spotting.
Right. It'll basically be plane spotting. You'll go, to New York Harbor, watch the rockets take off and land. Which, by the way, that is so cool.
Yeah, I'm so ready. Let's do it. You want to come to Montreal and for New Year's, and we'll watch the rockets?
I don't know. IDAR problems. I don't know if they're going to be allowed to fly to Canada.
Oh yeah.
This will be another hurdle they got to pass with the FAA and everyone, with them flying over land.
Yeah, the FAA
Right.
Multiple countries even.
I think that is going to be the biggest problem for transportation is changing airspace regulations for flying those kind of vehicles over and near populated areas. And the FAA is not going to like that.
I think the biggest takeaway from this is that we're a bunch of aerospace majors, and none of us think anything they said is particularly impractical.
Yeah, I think I think the problem with that is all the problems are more economic problems than anything else.
Right, exactly.
Because they've demonstrated most of this technology already.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is that. Also, kind of to progress with timeline, we should mention what they've done as far as actual progression. They've been testing the Raptor engine. That's been going well. They said they're kind of near the pressure they want to reach.
Yeah, it's at 1,200 seconds of firing time. The longest being 100 seconds.
And that is well longer than they expect to have to fire them ever, right?
Yeah, on Mars at
longer
least,
than
landing
mission.
on Mars.
Yeah, it's not ever. Earth launch is longer.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he just said the 100 seconds was just because of how big the tanks are for the test stand.
Oh, okay.
And also, they tested the carbon fiber tank, the 12-meter one, and we found out... Yeah, it blew up, but we found out that it failed not under its flight pressure, but above it.
Right, so they tested it successfully to the point where it needs to be tested, and then they just kept increasing the pressure to see when it would break, and eventually, yeah, it did break.
Yeah, it's called destructive engineering. It's a common thing.
Yes, so the tests for the tank were successful, which was a concern.
About 300 feet in the air.
Yeah, and it was a concern at one point that the carbon fiber tanks wouldn't be strong enough, but it turns out that they are. So, and that was for a 12-meter tank. Now that this vehicle has been scaled down to 9 meters, that would make this even, that would make it even easier, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying the square cube law. My dad would be proud of me. He loves it. The square cube law says you still have the same amount of material covering much less volume. So it's much stronger. The same a slightly smaller tank will be much stronger.
That was the tank they tested was for the spaceship, not the giant tank that's going to be for the booster. That's probably going to be a whole nother hurdle.
Well, so that'll still be 9 meters in diameter. It's just the length.
It's going to be a lot longer though.
Right.
That might introduce some problems.
So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Also, one thing they did not mention is where this will be launching from for the normal space missions. Originally the plan was to launch from the Cape on Launch Complex 39A. but there has been speculation since then that Boca Chica, the launch site they're developing in southern Texas, will be specifically designed to launch a Mars vehicle, which this BFR is the Mars vehicle. So
now
and
I
then
did.
you have,
Go ahead.
and I was just saying, and then you have, especially if you're doing commercial launches, if you want to have a constellation of polar orbiting satellites, you got to have a
You gotta
launch
get a polar
complex
solar-
at Vandenberg.
You got to get a polar satellite launch vehicle.
Well, so if you're using BFR for polar launches, I'm saying you're gonna have to launch from
I
Vandenberg.
was making an ISRU joke.
Yeah, I got the joke. Because you can't launch a polar vehicle from Boca Chica, correct?
No.
Because not that. Well, I mean, you can, but you would be flying over some islands or something that they don't have clearance to do.
Yep. So, yeah.
There's we don't specifically know, but on our side, SpaceX did that unconfirmed rumor thread. John K. Photos commented that where is it? Just saw it. There it is. For what it's worth, he just asked the SpaceX source if they were upgrading, Pad 4 for Falcon Heavy. And he said no, all heavies will be from 39A and then BFR. So
Okay.
it looks like they're still looking at 39A to launch it.
Which I think is understandable. My question is more with, are they also going to be launching from Boca Chica or Vandenberg or somewhere else? So that is yet to be announced formally. Also, another thing he mentioned was that the facility for construction, the facility to make BFR is under construction, but he did not mention what that facility is or where is it.
Yeah, I kind of figured it'd be in the factory. So unless Elon just kind of like misspoke and he kind of meant the existing factory, like the machines are going to be moved in, unless he meant that. But
yeah, I think that's probably what he meant, because he mentioned earlier that, the 9-meter diameter is because that's what currently fits in their factories. So they don't need to build a new factory. Like Blue Origin is building a new factory to build New Glenn because their current factory can only handle New Shepard-sized rockets. But SpaceX is able to handle a 9-meter rocket in their Hawthorne factory. And I believe that's also the limit for road transportation. Is that right? Like the rockets via the road, you can't be wider than 9 meters.
I don't know about that. I think it's 9 feet for a lane.
It's whatever Falcon 9 is, because that's why Falcon 9 is so skinny. It's because for road transport. Then again, I think you can get like special permits, because I think wasn't the shuttle tank transported by road or something. I think
It was transported by barge mostly, but maybe for some parts of it.
Yeah, like you can get like special permits and stuff, but
I mean, SpaceX is pretty good at barges.
Yeah.
That is true.
I cannot find Elon saying any timeline for suborbital flights. I tweeted at him. I'm waiting for a reply.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, BFR
about the AMA
I think that's probably it. So they'll have to think about it. If they're launching from the Cape, they're going to have to take a boat from the port of Los Angeles through the Panama Canal to Florida.
Right. They did that with Saturn V stage 1, 2, and 3.
Did they really?
Yep.
Where were they built?
They were built by Boeing up here.
You sure about that? Weren't they built in Alabama?
No, they were built here, tested in Alabama, then brought to the Cape.
I mean, unless the rockets just want to fly themselves there.
Just get it out to Vandenberg, do a suborbital hop to the Cape, and you're good to go. So that kind of, I'm just going through like my notes from the presentation, and that pretty much covers everything that I have.
If you want, Thomas, I'm here on Wikipedia. The S1C was the first stage of the American Saturn V rocket produced by the Boeing Company in Everett, Washington.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. I knew they were testing on it, but I figured they were built in Huntsville.
Nope. So anyways,
S&M, what else do you got for us?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention: the legs on the spaceship.
Oh,
How
yeah.
they're like
We
really
know it
small
has
compared
them,
to
but we
last
don't
year.
know how they work.
Yeah. Because
Wait.
Elon didn't go into any detail about them, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, the original animation at least gave a pretty close-up view of the landing legs, but that's clearly changed since then. So it is unclear what the
In the picture with them on the moon, it looks like they're like a solid steel strut that comes down out of the skirt there.
yeah, I think we'll have to wait for a more detailed idea of what those look like.
Yeah. All right, so we about ready to wrap up, guys?
Do we
Yeah,
have
I'd say
any more
so.
questions from
I
chat?
guess so.
Do we want to what?
I was just saying, do we have any more questions from chat that we can try and
Oh yeah,
answer?
yeah. We'll wait a couple minutes for chat questions and then.
Might have to redesign the legs for initial Mars flights. Things look like it could topple over on even ground.
Yeah, that's possible. I think if they do that, it's going to be incorporated into their weight and built,
I just thought of something.
built in. Yeah.
If they use the BFR for hurricane relief, they wouldn't really be able to land it in the water because, the waves. So how would they do that?
Find high ground.
Well, true.
I mean, you're landing on a rocket engine. You can burn trees down out from under you. Just kidding. Don't do that.
Well, I mean, we don't actually know if like let's say if it lands like in the water still, like on a barge, we don't actually know if that's a movable barge or if it's like a fixed platform on the bottom.
Right.
So, I mean, after a hurricane, I mean, it's a big metal
We
barge. It should be fine.
we may not we don't know anything about the architecture for that. We don't know if it needs to land on that. So there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Also, like, is it going to be a giant barge they're going to build, or are they going to try and buy an aircraft carrier and modify it?
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about Earth to Earth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another possibility is, are they going to just build an artificial island and launch from there? Because that might be easier and more stable than a barge or anything.
Carl Sagan's back just in time for us to end the stream.
Yeah, any more questions from chat before we wrap up? You, Carl.
All right. So I think that with that we're gonna call it.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything.
Yeah, that was fun. I had a good time. I think we covered pretty much everything, and if you have more questions, you can ask any of us on iFunny.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, bye. Thank you guys for coming, and we will see you whenever we do this some other time.
Yes.
Thank
See
you
you
to
here.
Space News Network for having us all on as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming, and thanks to SpaceNRobots for hosting it once again.
Yeah, well, I'm not great at that, so.
Let's just hope
We
your
just need to
internet
get you better
behaves.
internet, that's all.
Yeah, well, I'm moving, so.
At least you do it better than all three of us would.
Yep.
Timothy
Alright.
just said another stream after Q&A. I guess the AMA, you mean?
After the AMA, I guess it depends on how much new. If we don't learn a whole lot, then maybe we won't. But
Yeah.
it depends. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's if it happens.
Yeah.
He never officially confirmed anything, but
Alright. I think we're going to call it there. Thank you guys for
Yep.
coming. We will see you whenever. Goodbye.
Yes.